Hello, this is Hunk Marvel, and this is my first video, my first real video, proper video, that I've made since my original channel got shut down by YouTube for my Parkland, Florida shooting video, which you could find on Vimeo if you care. I have previously done a video on The Last Jedi and my critique over it, and since my channel got shut down, I haven't been able to put it back up, my previous video on The Last Jedi, because, well, I lost it. It's gone forever. But I made that video after watching other people's reviews and reading a synopsis for myself. But I recently watched The Last Jedi for the first time, and here is my first review of it after having actually seen the film. Now, this is filled with spoilers. But really, it's hard to spoil a film when the whole entire thing is basically just plagiarism. They just plagiarized Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi and combined it to form The Last Jedi. Now, The Last Jedi, did you know that there was a novel, a Star Wars novel, that was called The Last of the Jedi? I saw it for sale in the library the other day. The Last of the Jedi. And then they come up with The Last Jedi. What a generic name. This title, The Last Jedi, it shows that they're too focused on Jedi. And it shows they don't really put much work into these films. Or at least not into the writing. They certainly haven't put much thought into it. They just copied Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. It takes mostly from Empire, but, you know, just like from The Empire Strikes Back, the rebels had just destroyed the Death Star, and in the next movie, Empire Strikes Back, they have to evacuate their base. They have to escape the Empire. In this film, The Last Jedi, they just destroyed Starkiller Base, and now they're running from the Empire. I mean, the First Order. So in an early scene in the film, in the first scene in the film, actually, the resistance, and they're called the resistance because of World War II, the French resistance of the German occupation of France. So they're called the resistance. They're just obsessed. Hollywood is obsessed with World War II and the Nazis and the Holocaust and all that. So they call the rebels the resistance. Anyway, maybe one of you could help me answer this question. I'm a little confused about this early scene where you have Poe Dameron. He goes and engages the Dreadnought, a large ship belonging to the First Order, and Princess Leia orders him to break off his attack. And he doesn't. He disobeys the orders, and other ships follow him into battle, and they lose a lot of resistance ships, but they end up destroying a very large ship for the First Order. Why couldn't Princess Leia call off the attack of the other bombers that they ended up losing? I don't understand that. Please somebody answer that question for me. Why didn't she just call off the attack and let Poe attack him himself? And then he comes back and she smacks him in the face. I don't understand that. So there's a battle, and we switch to a scene with Emperor Snoke, or whatever his name is. He's the Sith Master, and Kylo Ren is the Sith Apprentice. So anyway, for some reason, the character of Snoke is a CGI character. Why? Why couldn't they just put makeup on somebody? Now, I know he's missing chunks of flesh and all that. Well, maybe that part could have been CGI, but what about the rest of them? Why does the whole thing have to be CGI? I feel like I'm watching a video game. I'm sick of it. That's one of my main problems with the prequels. It looks like a video game and not like you're watching an actual fight and battle in outer space. Don't get me wrong, I think Snoke looks great and very realistic, but you could still tell that he's not real. It looks great for a video game, but not for a major motion picture. Anyway, there's a scene where Snoke is castigating Kylo Ren He's just smashing him because he failed to defeat an untrained girl, Rey. He lost in battle to Rey. So he makes fun of him. He yells at him. He belittles him. And really, I feel like it's Rian Johnson belittling Jar Jar Abrams. By the way, I don't really have a script for this video, this review. I just have notes that I took while watching the film. So bear with me. Okay. Luke doesn't want to train Rey, and he wants the Jedi to end. Now this is a tremendous departure for the Luke Skywalker character. And Rian Johnson, I suppose he wanted to take a bold move. And it is a bold move to change Luke into the greatest hero of the greatest science fiction saga, and take that hero and change him into someone who just doesn't care anymore. He's given up. He's a hermit. He wants to be left alone and with his space cow, his space whale milk, and whatever else he does on this godforsaken island. But he just wants to allow the First Order to take over. And since he withdrew and didn't fight, didn't help Leia, the First Order was apparently able to get all-powerful and build Starkiller Base and destroy planet after planet after planet and kill billions and billions of people. So way to go, Luke Skywalker. It's a real bummer. You know, I was hoping he would... I was hoping that Luke would appear in The Force Awakens. I was hoping that Kylo Ren would be kicking Rey's ass in the forest, the snowy forest, near Starkiller Base. And just as he's about to strike her down, Luke uses the Force and throws him against a tree or something. And then he bursts into action in a dramatic entrance. That's what I was hoping would happen. But no. And that's also what Mark Hamill wanted to have happen. I think a lot of people were expecting that. But we're not talking about good writing here. We're talking about Hollywood hacks, corporate hacks, who really aren't any good at what they do. What this is iconoclastic, if I'm pronouncing the word right. You take an icon and you tear him down for whatever reason. But we didn't get that in The Force Awakens. He, for all intents and purposes, was not in The Force Awakens. Star Wars Episode 7. So, but he is in The Last Jedi for many scenes. So I was looking forward to it. But then I read the synopsis on Wikipedia and learned he doesn't do squat. But you know, this was an opportunity for the writer to use a very common theme in stories, where you take a character and he's one way at the beginning. He's a reluctant person. He doesn't want any part of it. And then by the end of the film, something changes him and he's a different character. It's a character arc. And he changes. So Luke, who initially was reluctant and didn't want to fight, he could have had a character arc. And he could have changed from someone who was a hermit and didn't want to get involved, like Uncle Owen, and change into someone who cared again. Someone whose passion was revived, like with the death of Han, and the desire to help Leia with her struggle. And that would change him into wanting to help Rey. So then Luke could show up eventually. First Rey would show up with the Millennium Falcon and Chewie, and she would help in her way. And then Luke would show up with his X-Wing fighter. and he could help the Resistance escape. And he could confront Kylo Ren and have a lightsaber duel with him. There were no lightsaber duels in The Last Jedi. None. It was the first proper Star Wars film of the episodic films that didn't have a lightsaber duel. So he could have had a character arc, could have had an evolution of the Skywalker character, but in the end he never gets involved. He doesn't fight. He doesn't show up. He wasn't there. He didn't show up to help Leia. When he meets up with Leia, she says, "I'm glad you're here." And it's all a lie. He wasn't really there. Okay, so the chase continues. The Resistance can't lose the First Order who are chasing them in space. But they can stay far away enough so that the First Order's cannons can't penetrate their shields. So they only have a certain amount of time before they run out of fuel. I don't understand that. Could somebody please explain that to me? There's no friction in outer space. So once you fire up your boosters and your engines, your hyperdrive, whatever, and you get to a certain speed, you could turn off your engines and just coast forever. You don't need to burn any fuel once you've reached a certain speed. So it doesn't make any sense. And also, the whole chase doesn't make any sense. Why didn't they just split up and then rendezvous somewhere else? They know that they're tracking the head ship. So why don't they split up and then sacrifice the lead ship? At least they'd escape with most of their forces. Instead, they follow this stupid plan where, and Holdo won't tell them what the plan is, so they end up losing a bunch of ships. The whole thing is stupid. And why didn't the First Order just use their hyperdrive to end up ahead of the Resistance ships, or call out other First Order ships who are in other parts of the galaxy to show up in front of the fleeing Resistance ships to catch them in a flank? I swear that these writers in Hollywood are the stupidest people in the world. And yet they have a very high opinion of themselves. Anyway, Kylo Ren is flying his spaceship, and he senses his mother, Leia, on the lead ship, and he's prepared to fire on her position in the ship. But he is reluctant to do so. He hesitates, and then some other First Order ships that are accompanying him in the mission, in the attack, open fire, and there's an explosion, and Leia, along with a whole bunch of other people, are sucked out into the vacuum of space. So she's sucked out into space, and she uses the Force to fly back into the ship. I don't understand that. I thought the ship was traveling at a high rate of speed. Wouldn't she be left behind? She got sucked out of the ship. Wouldn't the ship keep going? And I doubt she'd be able to use the Force quickly enough to catch up with the ship. I don't understand that. I don't get it! I don't get it! To quote Wonder Waz. Anyway, Admiral Holdo is the next in command, so she takes over when Leia is incapacitated. Leia's in a coma. So she immediately, he wants to know what the plan is, and she brushes him off and insults him and laughs at him. Now, I have to talk about her hair. Every once in a while, I see a mature woman. She's not a teenager. You're not in your 20s. You're not in your 30s. you're in your 40s or your 50s or beyond, and you have hair that is a very strange color. You could, color your hair however you want, but to me, look, you got to beware of women with hair that is this color. You're a grown woman. You're not a child. You're not 12 years old. You're not a teeny bopper. Act your age. You just look ridiculous. Then we meet Rose, whose sister died on one of the bombing raids on the Dreadnought. And she stuns Finn, who's trying to abandon the resistance again. She stuns him because that's what she does to people who are deserters, right? I'm a little confused here. Isn't that slavery? He's going to be a runaway slave. He's a slave trying to run away. He doesn't want to be there. Has this man been drafted? I don't remember him signing any draft papers to join the resistance. He was hurt in the battle against Kylo Ren. He never formally joined the resistance. He didn't sign any papers. So it's like he's a slave. This is against his will. So she stuns the man attempting to escape. The slave who's trying to escape. Well done, Rian Johnson. Well done. So anyway, he's trying to desert the resistance. Isn't that slavery? It is slavery. You have to stay with us, the resistance, until you die? Is that how it works? So explain to me, how are you any better than the First Order? Resistance? And if you could do that, if you have the power to do that, why don't you just draft everybody in the whole galaxy to fight against the First Order? Apparently you think you have the right to force people to serve. You're forcing Finn to serve. So why don't you just draft the entire galaxy and force them to help you? The first king of Israel was named Saul. He was 6.5 feet tall. He was a farmer. He was appointed the king, the first king of Israel, by a prophet, by the prophet Samuel. After he was anointed with oil, Saul went back to his farming. And things were cool for a while. And then Israel was being attacked. The tribes of Israel were being attacked. And they needed to raise an army. So Saul drafted people. And what did he do? He said, by proclamation of the king, King Saul, every able-bodied man must join the army to fight off these attacks. And if you refuse to join the army, we will slay all of your oxen and your cattle. And it worked. And they raised an army and they defeated the enemy. So why doesn't the resistance do this? Why don't they draft everybody in the galaxy and force them to join and fight the First Order? It's in their interest anyway. And they have the power to do it. But they're so inept, it's unbelievable. They're even inept in this movie. They are a bunch of fuck-ups. They are losers. The resistance is pathetic. But really, this is all make-believe. They're pathetic because the writing is so bad and so stupid. The incompetence isn't the resistance. The incompetence is with Rian Johnson and J.J. Abrams and Kathleen Kennedy. This whole thing is ridiculous. Now, Rose and Finn go on a mission to find a codebreaker to get on the ship to disable the tracker so the resistance can escape. Rose, by the way, has an awful hairdo, ladies. Do not have bangs that go straight across your forehead. This is not an attractive look. Anyway, Rose explains that she and her sister grew up on a planet where the First Order stripped their minds of ore and they financed their military. Then they tested their weapons on the people. Ooh, they're so mean, aren't they? Where was the Republic when all this was happening? They just let it happen? The First Order took the money from the ore and bought all of their weapons and vehicles from the corporation on this rich planet. Why did the Republic allow this planet to have weapons to sell? And if the Republic had no army or weapons, why didn't the rich planet owners, the corporation on the rich planet, why didn't they just take over the galaxy and replace the Republic? Again, this is all make-believe. It's just bad writing. That's why it doesn't make any sense. It's just bad, incompetent writing by Rian Johnson. In all fairness, you know, the thing about Luke trying to kill Kylo Ren, it was just a fleeting feeling that he had. He was just overwhelmed by the dark side that he felt in him. And he was ashamed. And some of the movie reviewers made it sound like Luke planned to kill him. He went into the tent intending to kill him. That's not true. It was just, he just felt that way for a second. And then he decided not to, and he felt shame. But they tell the story of how Kylo Ren changed to the dark side. And there was just a misunderstanding. Kylo thought that Luke really wanted to kill him. He brings down the hut on Luke and destroys the Jedi Temple and a whole bunch of Padawans. Crate has an armored fortress. Crate, the planet, has an armored fortress with power to send a distress signal to allies on the outer rim of the galaxy, with the hope that they'll come to their aid. I don't know why they didn't just draft them, but whatever. Snoke shows Rey the rebel transports blowing up. It's ridiculous. This throne room scene. It's Jedi all the way. It's Return of the Jedi all the way. He actually shows Rey. He forces her to go up to a window, and he shows the Resistance transports blowing up, just like in Return of the Jedi when the Emperor told Luke, "Look at your Rebel Alliance being destroyed. They're dying. There's nothing you can do about it." So she surrenders and voluntarily goes to Kylo Ren, who brings her to Snoke. What a ripoff! Oh, and her cuffs fell off, just like in Return of the Jedi. So Luke surrenders himself, goes to Darth Vader, who brings him in handcuffs to the Emperor, who makes his handcuffs fall off. Rey surrenders herself to Kylo Ren, who takes her in cuffs to see Snoke, whom uses the Force to make the cuffs fall off. And then, just as the Emperor said, look through this window, and you could see the rebels dying. Look through this window, Rey, and you can see the Resistance dying. Total plagiarism. George Lucas should sue and get back Star Wars. He should sue Disney for everything they've got. And just like in Return of the Jedi, after Snoke says the Resistance is all going to die, she pulls a lightsaber into her hands and attacks Snoke, just like Luke did in Return of the Jedi. It's unbelievable. Oh, and just like in Return of the Jedi, as Darth Vader killed the Emperor, in The Last Jedi, Kylo Ren kills Snoke. Total plagiarism. It's unbelievable. And just as Finn and Rose are to be executed after they got on board the ship, Admiral Holdo goes into hyperdrive after everybody else left the ship, and that destroys much of the First Order's fleet. But for some reason, Finn and Rose are the only ones to survive except for a few troops and Captain Phasma, who were right next to them while they were about to be executed. But then there's the explosion, and Finn and Rose, of course, are okay. Everybody else around them's dead, and Phasma and a few of her troops are like a block away all of a sudden. All of a sudden, they're like a block away. How did that happen? And why is Captain Phasma so concerned with killing Finn? Wouldn't they be more concerned with abandoning ship since it's falling apart and blowing up? What's going on here? I noticed there were a lot of close-ups of, like, they pan the camera and they zoom in on their faces of these non-characters with no lines. They're not important. But they keep doing these close-ups on these rebel pilots who are either women or people of color, as if to say, look, see? Here's a rebel who isn't a white male. Look, it's a black woman. Look, it's a Chinese man. Oh, what's that? That's an alien. Ah, it's a woman. It's a woman pilot. Diversity, yay! It doesn't matter that this story makes no sense and it sucks. We have diversity. That's our strength. Empire Strikes Back. The rebels are on Hoth, the snow planet. In The Last Jedi, the Resistance is on a salt planet. And they have a guy taste the salt to let you know that it's salt and not snow. Why couldn't someone just say, we're going to the salt planet? Great. No, they had to have somebody act it out. Why? Why not just have it be a snow planet? We're not going to think that it's plagiarism if you make it salt and not snow? I don't think so, Rian Johnson. You stole everything. And yet you say kill the past. Can you break? Anyway, here's another example of plagiarism. These are the stormtroopers that they used on Crate. Do they look familiar? Yeah. It looks like the stormtroopers that the Empire used on Hoth in Empire Strikes Back. On the snow planet. I guess when you're on a salt planet, you have to wear this. It protects you from the salt. It's ridiculous. Total plagiarism. It's just, these people have no shame. In one scene, Kylo Ren says, kill the past. Kill the past. Let it all go. Rian Johnson wrote those words. But he used Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi and made a Franken film. This is not a film. This is a Franken film. It's made up of parts of other movies. And he presents it as his own work. And it's not his, well, it is his work because it's a piece of shit. And he's a shitty writer. But he took something that's great and he made his version of it and made a Franken film. This film, The Last Jedi, is made up of parts of Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi and an example of shameless plagiarism. Yet he says, kill the past. And the way they took out Luke Skywalker. He doesn't even leave the planet. He doesn't raise his X-Wing fighter out of the water. That would have been a great scene. No, we didn't get any of that. We didn't get a great lightsaber battle with Luke Skywalker. They punked us. It was just a giant troll. I heard rumors that Mark Hamill was getting in shape and he was just ripped now. Like he was getting ready to do a lot of action scenes. Great action scenes. Luke Skywalker is once again going to kick ass. He doesn't even leave the planet. He doesn't raise his X-Wing out of the ocean. He just levitates on a rock, watching the sunset, and he projects himself to another planet to distract the First Order so that the Resistance can escape. Why didn't he just go there physically so he could have used his projection temporarily and then used his real self? He could have done even more good that way. And he could have been there. But he wasn't there. Because it's a new age, right? It's time for Rey to be the hero. You know, this whole thing is it's just a big fraud. This is not a Star Wars film because George Lucas did not write this story and had nothing to do with it. But they took his work and made their version of it, their corporate, diversity-focused version of Star Wars. But it's Star Wars in name only. It's just a brand name. They just have the rights to it. It's sort of like a Sherlock Holmes story that isn't written by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. It's not really a Sherlock Holmes story, unless he wrote it. I once saw a video, kids react to whatever, a kids react video, and the kid said, everything I've grown up with is just a rehash. It's just a reboot of something. It's not original. Well, this is another example of it. You know, The Last Jedi. It's just a rehash of Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. And The Force Awakens before that was a rehash of A New Hope. Well, with regards to the Star Wars franchise, as long as Disney owns it, I have no hope at all. Should be very concerned.